Hi, you beautifuls. So today I'm doing a dual thing. I'm speaking with the Meeting of the Crossroads folks at the same time, cognizant of the fact that I'm going to upload this to YouTube here in a little while for that side of the community. And it is August 28th, 2024. And we're sitting here right at this sort of juxtaposition of a astrocartography experience where I'm just going to kind of give you an outline, then we'll go into some of the details. We've got Mercury that just came out of retrograde today. We have a new moon coming up at the beginning of September, just a couple of days from now, where we're going to be working with that new moon in Virgo energy, the beginning of a new thing coming through. We're also looking at a deeply cosmically connected Venus. That's having a lot of encounters inside of Libra. So relationship on top of relationship. And that can be your relationship with yourself, and it can be your relationship with others, and your relationship to how you navigate that. We're also looking at Uranus going retrograde here in a couple of days, about the same time that the new moon is happening. We're having, Uranus kind of like barging through the front door and being like, hello, whatever you've not sorted out already is now on the table for examination. So we've got this deep, yummy Venus. We've also got this catalytic Uranus coming in. And we've also got Pluto that's retrograding for its last time into Capricorn. So let's talk a little bit about what those pieces mean. Pluto is our underworld. It is the place where things compost and things come up from to be learned. It's a lot of the unconscious side of things. And Pluto is one of the longest, oldest arcs of travel. So like it is coming out of the sign of Capricorn and moving into the sign of Aquarius. So the age of Aquarius, this is one of those big planetary shifts that is shifting us into a whole new age. And with that, it's going to come a lot of shifts and changes as we move out of the very slow and steady and practical Capricorn side of things and into the Aquarius side of things, which is much more physical presence in the body. How is this working? How are we mentally understanding this? How are we accepting new progressive ways of moving forward? And how and what does it look like to come into deep connection with all the stuff that is either in the way or a nervous system that is so slow at being able to respond that it's not able to be deeply present yet in a way where it can reset itself, come back into a regulation. We spend so much of our life in a dysregulated state, feeling worried, feeling scared, feeling terrified about what's next, or frozen about how we plan a thing, how we move into a confidence that has us being like, yeah, this is what I'm working on today, knowing that it's playing a role somewhere in a way that we can't necessarily tell. We've spent a lot of time simply trusting, and now we're moving into a place where it is both about releasing control and also about stepping into responsibility. And so there's a lot of push pulls, lots of rocks in hard places, lots of fine edges that we're walking instead of like, deep luxurious paths that we can meander down and around. It's like goat paths that we're navigating. And we've spent since 2008 with our Pluto in Capricorn. So if you want to find a point of relativeness for this in your own world, think back to what was being started or ended or catalyzed, fermented back in 2008. Whatever those themes were then, it's coming to a full cycle completion. It is an Ouroboros, where the snake is eating its own tail. It is a completion, a movement through, right? So, and it can take a lot of different forms. Look and see where Pluto is in your astrology chart. What house is it in? What sign is it in? You can also go over to the human design side of things and look at where Pluto is. What gate do you have Pluto in? And you can look in the design side and the design side and the personality side. And are they the same? Are they different? Are they in retrograde? Are they in detriment? Are they in exalted? How is it that you've been in a place of being in your own underworld? So when we think about an underworld, it's like the deep subconscious, right? If we've got our conscious that's aware of, you know, our day-to-day activities that we're going to do today, we have to do this shopping list, and then we need these items, and I want to call this friend, and I have this meeting to go to. Unconscious is the body that's like, oh, I need to stretch, I need to move, oh, that plant's saying something to me, hold on, I feel like I'm getting a sensation. It's a sensorial reality that is much more driven by following our beingness. The subconscious, and how I've come to play with it and understand it, is this driving force. It's kind of part of where the birthing of our callings come from. It's also the birthing by which our lessons and our learnings, however delightful or painful we may perceive them to be, which often has to do with how long we let it go on for before we do something different, without shame or judgment in this process, simply being able to see the isness and have that point of continual movement forward. I want to share my screen here for a little bit and talk with you about some of the energies that are in play in this time period. So Mercury gestation direct today at 5:14 p.m. So just a couple hours ago. We are in this Mercury stepping forward in this way. It's coming out of retrograde through the sign of Leo. Let me just scroll down here a little bit to Mercury. So I highlighted this blue because there's something major happening today. So this is not highlighted like these others. These browns are all retrogrades. This Uranus is highlighted because this one's going retrograde in just a couple of days, where this one over here is just coming out of a retrograde. So we've got two major shifts, Mercury and Uranus, both one coming out and one going in, is a whole different kind of deep energy, right? So Mercury rules Virgo, which is around deep communication, to the point, you know, laid out information, and it's coming out of retrograde smack into Leo, a very fixed energy, a very head-based energy. We're looking at the Ajna here. This is gate 4. This is all about the answers, right? So Mercury's coming out of its quiet time or its contemplation time straight into the realm of I have answers, except that we've also got a number of other places that are active that aren't necessarily receptive to that Leo bursting forth of I have answers just yet, right? It wants to sit and be with, right? And we can find it any place where we find ourselves intolerant over this next week. Intolerant of our own self, intolerant of the world around us, you know, where the dilemma is, you know, what is the reason behind this? Or why do I have to speak up in this way? Why am I being silenced about speaking up in these ways? Why is there no avenues for me to speak up in these ways? These are all some of the flavors that can be present during this time of things, and this deep state of needing answers. And so it can feel very kind of tension filled. They talk about a standstill, having this standstill about what's being met during this time in Leo. And it really needing us each to come to this new level of ownership within ourselves. What are we taking responsibility for? What are we here to understand that we've not yet finished an understanding with? So it's Mercury is playing a deep role when it comes to this Pluto, this spiritual rebirth that has been sitting in these retrogrades, right? So this retrograde, it has been in and out. So like right now, it's actually out of retrograde and it's sitting in, it's in, I'm just gonna scroll real quick. So gate 60 spans Capricorn and Aquarius, right? 36 degrees of one into the second degree of the other. So it's been going retrograde in and out of Capricorn, the last degree, and Aquarius, the first degree. It's like been stitching back and forth between Capricorn and Aquarius, both still in the line in this gate of 60. Gate 60 is, it's all about acceptance. It's all about seeing life as it is. It's Scorpio energy. It's looking at life and death as something of a deep practicality, deliberate practical evolution. You know, it's a realism that accepts limitations as part of what we're here to experience, and thus create a way to get over them, to get through them. It's a root drive force of what is it that I need to become in deeper acceptance of. We're looking at the shadow of limitations, where we have closed circuit thinking. You know, we were talking earlier today in our meeting about knowing the different things that we need to do and not always knowing how to lens stack them in such a way that we have a order of operations that gets us from point A to point B and gives us that trajection movement that allows us to create a thing or to even be with, right? And so Pluto would say right now that too is a limitation. We have the ability, we have everything we need inside of ourselves. It's how we tap into it. And it's also by knowing how to be with each other, because each other pulls and taps into who we are and helps us discover deeper strengths about ourselves, right? Helps us to discover realism, the common sense of magic, being structuring led by common sense. Well, I mean, that's a whole new thing to think about these days, because I'm discovering the common sense ain't not so common anymore, or at least my sense of common sense is not necessarily what is a modern sense of common sense, depending on what age bracket you're in, what culture you're coming from, what kinds of communities you've traveled with. And so it's like stepping way back and really getting a sense of where am I in this sense of shared language around what is common. So it's a whole different depth around relationship with our own understandings, with relationships with other people. It's a deep component. Let's see. Yeah, the codon ring for Mercury. This one here. This codon ring here is the gate of union. Codon ring of union, and that has to do with relationships. It has to do with purifying our relationship to relationships. Let's see if I can break that down a little bit. Ooh, and this has a personal layer in it. So let me see if I can listen and give you a synergy. When we can get really honest with ourselves and come to terms with how our mind and our energy and how our physical body all create a thing by which we say, this is what I am attracted to. And then there's the reality of what happens and what is possible. Because what happens between two people is dependent upon what is happening in each individual. And while that may make such a common sense, and you might say, Raine, why are you talking about such silly things? That makes common sense. Remember, not everything is common these days, right? So practicing being able to be in yourself, be in someone else's shoes, recognize that how often if we are thinking a way about a person, we find ourselves, oh, I find this person attractive. Well, that's how you feel about your reaction to their physicality, which they can't control. Right? So getting really deep with where our relationships, where is the truth in our relationships? Where do we see potential that is actually our own potential that we would do, how we would act if we were in that situation? Because if we project that onto another being, we can expect them to behave in ways that they may not have any shared understanding of. And yes, that can bring us right back to a place of being deeply serious, right? So let me dive into Venus while I'm talking in this route of things. Venus is our values, it's our relationship, it's how we love, right? It rules Libra, and it's in the sign of Libra at the moment. Virgo to Libra, right? So earth and air, we're looking at, this is the lover of the body. This is dedication to being in our reality, our own reality, right? If my reality is what it is for me, and another person's reality is what it is for them, then when I'm looking at them, I need to consciously go, how may I see their reality for how it is in their world? And then recognize that I also have my own perception of it. So it's like a two-part story. Sometimes how we, like what I think about someone else, this is to me the reason why I cleave between people and behaviors. I feel like it's important to talk about behaviors that can be conducive or corrosive. Thank you, Raine Jean, for languaging around how something can be of a variable state of impact. Corrosive is not always a bad thing. You can quite appreciate a beautifully patinaed metal piece of jewelry that has gone through a corrosion process in order to bring out its beauty. And that same corrosiveness that shows up on the underside of the carriage of your vehicle that rusts out your gas tank is of a detriment to you being able to drive. Right? So conducive and corrosive depends on a thing, depends on what we're looking for and where we're trying to go. And so how we live in our bodies is so deeply dependent on what we are trying to focus on. Are we focusing outside of our body and then trying to serve our body? Or are we focusing in here first? Gate 46 has a lot to do with seriousness and delight. This is the gate of the sensual. This is the gate of living life in deep relationship with the natural world around us, with how life feels against our skin, with how we relate to one another in a way that has a visceral feeling to it. And this seriousness dance with delight, trusting that we are at the right place at the right time, rather than being stuck in the life is serious and you gotta figure it out, and that have to, and that push, and that dilemma of, do I have enough fortune? Is there going to be enough in it for me? Can lead us to spending too much money and being frivolous. It can also lead us to being miserly and holding on to everything and being cold and disheartened. I'd almost say this 46 is a little bit like a Scrooge. And so how are we in relationship with our own sense of values and our own sense of love? Are we miserly with it? Do we give to ourselves richly? Because if we want to give to others richly, we need to fill this cup first. Otherwise, we're going to be going to everyone of service with an empty cup, expecting them to fill the cup, and then in a place of most likely being unhappy because we're out of bandwidth and we're low in our cup, and expecting other people to fill it, right? You see how we end up down this negative spiral, versus where if we start with, what do I need to fill my cup? Now that might be asking for help. That might be like, I would love to have a tea party, or can I get together and have a chat with a few of my besties, or with a group of people that are focused in an intentional way. Whatever that's needed, it's time to find that languaging and be present with it. Mars is in the gate of standstill, and that one's going to create some fun. There's caution, there's appropriateness being asked for in this Mars energy right now, and Mars is, it rules Aries, and we're in Gemini, so it's like hot fiery energy that's being heated up. And it's also sitting in the 5th house, which has to do with how we feel in relationship to pleasure, right? So there's a lot of nuance in that process. We're looking at the shadow of vanity with the Mars. It's a dilemma of being alone, right? Is it better to be alone? In my search for perfection, is it better to be alone and not have anybody fuck with what I've got? Or is it better to be in a relationship with others and potentially risk having everything that losing everything that I have? So that's that dilemma of aloneness, and where it's all about oneself, where we're afraid to lose our unique power, giving it over to someone else, i.e., giving from a not full cup would be a way of losing our power. Giving our power away is we're not filling our own self first. And so it's teaching us about the art of discrimination. It's a kind of discernment that says, discrimination says, that is not for me. That is harmful for me. This is not going to be of service. My valuing myself as less than is no longer acceptable. And it's part of the codon ring of trials, right? This is the trials that we move through as we purge through deeper and deeper layers of what it is to be human. We have simple basic ones, and then we have deeper and deeper ones as we go through, and this is one of the deeper ones. Let's see if there's other things that I wanted to come through. Uranus. Let's talk about Uranus just for a second. Catalytic energy. So gate 8. It's in Taurus and Gemini, so it's another fixed energy. We have a lot of fixed energy that's flowing through at the moment and changing, right? So this fixed energy is about to go backwards. So how we contribute, how we promote, how we walk our talk is about to go under review. This is when we are deploying our own individuality for the benefit of the group, even if that means we're home in bed taking care of ourselves. That is also a contribution. If you're serving yourself, you're serving the community in a sense. That's what this energy is all about, right? And so inspiration, originality, what do you need? What do I need? To take really good, exquisite care of these vessels that we're traveling through. Right now, there is so much neutrino energy that's moving through with all the solar flares that are happening and all of the energy spikes that are moving through, along with these catalytic energies. There's a lot of new energy, not familiar to us in this lifetime that we are currently in. Kinds of energy that our bodies, what we're embodied into, aren't used to picking up and receiving. So sometimes that sleeping of 10 to 13 hours in a day, if that's what your body needs, do it. The drinking more water. Speaking of, this Uranus energy is inviting us to deeply reevaluate, reassess, review, rewrite how we are in relationship with ourselves, how we are seeing the world through a lens. Does all of life feel mediocre? Do we live safely in a gray world? It's about being able to be beyond our comfort zone. It's how we influence each other. So it's a victim of the mundane, where we have a difficult time in being with what is happening around me. Like I might be able to walk outside and be like, oh, it's just another day. It's hot, it's sticky, and the crickets are going. Or I could walk out and feel the wind across my cheeks and listen to the chitter chatter of the hummingbirds as they bicker their way back and forth from their resting spaces to the hummingbird feeder. I could tune into any number of things that exist in the world right outside my door and find the magic in it. And just like that, I can be out of victim of the mundane. You can find it in yourself wherever we're wooden and stiff feeling, or where there's an artificialness, like a superficiality. Style, a rebel with a cause, right? So leaning into what's your internal rebel with a cause? What's your cause, and what are you rebelling against? What are you here to stand up for? Like, I feel like I'm here, this part of what I'm here for is to stand up for people's rights, to stand up for that space for the oppressed to stand up. Now, the oppressed also gets to stand up, and the people oppressing get to step off. And I am with the touchstones concept, with just my being as a makeup, holding space for that sort of thing. And inside of my own self, I have a lot of won't accept, won't tolerate certain kinds of behaviors in my inner core of a thing. That gives me the ability to be a rebel with my own kind of cause. That also means that some people don't like me. I've had to learn to get over that. You're not gonna, I'm no way everyone's gonna be happy with you all the time. And the more of a embodied person you are, and the more of an outspoken person you are, the more that may be true. More people may have problems with you. Learning to be able to be with that process, it's a very hopeful thing and healthy. Codon ring of water, 8. I'm just going to pop over here real quick and let's see. I don't know if that took. I don't think that took you guys with me. Oops. Codon ring, water, feminine, self-realization, inner human lemniscate journeys, infinity symbol, Mobius strips, ecstatics, reading their passionate writings, dancing it out, writing from your own experiences, weaving pain and pleasure, red tents and women's lodges. So there's a lot of deep energy when it comes into how do we come into relationship with how do we move from mediocrity into style? How do we walk our talk? It's a very intuitive space. So Monday and Tuesday, I'm talking about Monday and Tuesday this next week as we're building up through this weekend. Monday brings us to the new moon. New moon's going to be in Virgo. I'm going to take you up to where the moon is now. Moon is sitting here in the 6th house. We're in gate 52. I'm going to scroll real quick. And we're sitting in Cancer. So moon in Cancer. That is apropos. Cancer is very emotional. It's going to be moving into Virgo for the new moon. And it's going to be moving into gate 59. And that new moon energy with the 59 has a deep connection in dishonesty and intimacy and selectivity when it comes to what kinds of intimacy that we are willing to engage in. So what that can mean for us is that as we come into relationship with this moon, it's going to ask us to begin to clarify our intentions, begin to identify our responsibilities, our prioritizations. So that's some of the things that we were talking about in tonight's session earlier, was how we get to go about that whole process of being able to be with the different pieces and parts that are a part of coming into prioritization, coming into planning, coming into being able to be with the totality of what we actually need to do in life, like how we're going to pay our bills, how we're going to get a vehicle, how we're going to start up a business, how we're going to move into another stage of life. This new moon can help us to see where we can no longer, what we can no longer be responsible for anymore. Just as much as it's also showing us where we need to become, not even so much where we need to become more responsible, it's showing us how we can become more responsible in the ways that we choose and the ways that are healthy for us. That's also asking for us to be able to see what we can no longer be responsible for. So it's like a cord cutting kind of moon. And with that comes the need to know what it is that you're cutting, right? You can't just go, oh, I'm just going to cut off any bad feelings that exist. That's not clear enough. It wants to be something like, let me see if I can pull an example out of the ether. I release the need to hold on to stories that no longer serve. I release the need to see someone else in a negative light in order to accept the fact that this was no longer an aligned thing to be a part of. I release the need to assume that I should be in a different place than where I am. I release the need. I release the thought that my power is anywhere other than already inside of me, waiting to come out. I release the need to think it's too hard or I am not capable of asking for help. I release the thought that no one would help me if I asked. So any one of these gives kind of like a 1 to 2 stage depth of what we might look into our world and go, what is it that I could be releasing that would make me feel lighter? Where we are right now in this energy, as we're sitting here in this earth energy, we're sitting in the first line of gate 37. And this is the gate of friendship, the gate of loyalty. You know, we're looking at where we are right now. This first line is investigative. It's curious. How do we explore the possibilities that might develop into something? This is all about the human family, coming into relationship with the things that we need, recognizing our weaknesses, recognizing our equality. This is the ascent of the family. The more I give, the more I receive. So less around the greed, less around the I have to be self-protective. When we are so self-protective, we can often miss something, or we can lock things out, right? Rigid on the intake, rigid on the input, a form of boundaries, right? So boundaries, rigid on the input, rigid on the output, porous on the input, porous on the output. Both, all four of those ways of relating to our boundaried self. So in our physicality, our boundary is our skin. In our mind, our boundaries, I would say, exist in our brain and in our mind. And those are two different things. Brain being more associated with like our spinal cord and our nervous system and that whole autonomic response part. And then the mind being the thing that thinks and analyzes and processes, and the ajna and the head center inside of the human design body graph. And so then where are those boundaries? And our emotional side of things, how much do we leak or do we resist? How much do we shame ourselves because we think we're not doing things good enough or well enough, or that we haven't been doing it long enough, or that we aren't further ahead, or that life has passed us by? And this may be for people who are already delving, right? There are some people who haven't really had these things yet. And that's okay too. We all come into it in our own time. There's no judgments where any of these things lie. I give this information around this new moon that's coming up here in 3 days because it is the setup for the eclipse that we're about to experience 2 weeks after that on the 17th. It's going to be a lunar eclipse in Pisces. And that line of things is going to be bringing in a deeper awareness around things that are ending. So we're in this vortex between now and I think it's the middle of November is when the eclipses are finished and Pluto has moved finally fully into Aquarius. And we've shifted a lot of these energies into a different place, right? I'm not putting a better or worse on, and it will be in a different state at that point in time. And right now we're focusing in on these energies around, I highlighted them over here in the codon ring section. Okay, so feminine work, right? Self-realization, inner lemniscate journeys, ecstatic paths. We're also looking at the purification of relationships and setting the stage for collective leadership, equality, and changes in our general relating. This might be periods of celibacy, conscious choosing of relationships, leadership training, mediation circles. So this can look like transformative justice showing up inside of communities, which I can already say that that's already been in full swing. I have seen quite a bit of that this summer. I've been a part of quite a bit of that this summer. We're also looking at the codon ring of Gaia, blueprint of union, allowing or preventing awareness to move between life forms. We're all parts of an ecosystem. So this is like the study of how we are a permaculture garden, individually, and then as a community or as whatever small nucleated families we might be, and becoming aware of the ability to unlock from inside of us that which is an abundance. Right? So we can do this through logical thinking and discussion, or through our senses, listening to the mountain around us or the prairie around us, or listening to the plants, or feeling with the stones, or being in a sensorial world. It can also be about tracking through your past, doing parts work, sitting with plants and listening and track how they speak through your senses. I spoke about that a little bit already. Right, so we've got these three major codon rings that we are moving through. And as that brings about a balance into our world, we have the ability to be able to, we have the potential to come into a much deeper way of relating. And we are still sitting with our Chiron in gate 42, and it's in the third line right now. So that means, or 42. So that means this is the gate of completions. And the gate of completions is busy running around, bumping into things, figuring out how it doesn't work to get things done, right? Sounds a little bit like what we've been talking about, right? And we're looking at it in the second and third house right now. It's kind of like on the cusp there. And that's looking at like values and worth, and how we value a thing, how we grow a thing, increase a thing, how we let go of living and dying, you know, how we deal with expectations, how we deal with, how we grow detachment that still has compassion. These are yummy times indeed. Lots of catalytic experiences. All right, beautifuls. I think that feels good for the evening. I'm going to close out this conversation with y'all that I'm going to share on YouTube and get back to the meeting of the Crossroads folks. And I look forward to seeing y'all again soon. And for now.